The world is transitioning into EVs and it's doing it fast. The nations are in a rush to the finish line. It's much greater than the oil rush of the 20th century. Everyone wants the biggest share of the pie to monopolize this gold mine of the future. But the real questions to ask are, who is actually winning the game? Is the winner today still going to win tomorrow? Where does India stand? Is India winning or losing? To understand this, first we need to look at the EV industry of China and the US. So let's dive into one of the most impactful wars of the 21st century. It's the year 2010. You want to buy a car, you don't know which car to buy. But I bet an EV wasn't on the list of the options you were choosing from. Fast forward, it's the year 2022. Your old car is now having issues, which made you decide to buy a new. There's the list again, but apart from the names, there is a big difference in the list itself. 1/4 of your list today is composed of EVs, and this percentage is going to increase even faster with time. This is the significance of the EV industry. Conventional vehicles run on oil. Today, the Middle East has 48% of the world's known oil reserves. Its power do not need any explanation. Batteries are the fuel for the EVs, and those need lithium to make. China alone owns 65% of the world's supply chain of lithium batteries. You see the problem? Let's break this story into pieces now. The race was on. Before the players were even conscious of the game, China had begun making moves. Africa has the largest mineral reserves in the world. China had started buying African mines as early as 1997. Today, it controls 60% of the world's rare earth metals. These pieces of metals are important for nearly every new tech these days, including the EVs. Currently, China is the undisputed king in the EV space. It dominates nearly every part of the supply chain. Mining, processing, battery cells, production, you name it, China dominates it. More than 50% of the world's EVs are made in China. They are also the largest consumer of the product. The EV industry has two segments in it, the government and supply chain side and the company and market side. Consider Apple, an American giant. It's owned mainly by Americans and is American, right? However, as you all know, Apple has factories in China and elsewhere. Assembly isn't the point. Even the critical parts like its chips are also made in China or Taiwan. While Apple is diversifying its supply chain fast, its dependence on these two countries is of no question. Similarly is the case for Tesla. While Tesla has factories all over the world, 50% of its global deliveries are made in China. Despite trying to steer away from Chinese supply points, the company hasn't shown much growth in the area on a global level. The industry's two segments have various dominance. The market of EVs outside China is not dominated by the Chinese companies, with Tesla, Nissan and others competing for it. There are players in the market like Lucid, General Motors, etc. who are keeping up with the top players to stay relevant in the game. All these companies are finding alternatives to the existing supply chain, reducing the dependence on China and focusing on R&D for the same. Researchers at MIT have made a new kind of battery that is made of easily available materials, which can give stiff competition to the lithium batteries. Similar efforts are being made by other countries and companies as well, with varying degrees of success. Tesla confirmed that nearly half of all its vehicles use cobalt-free batteries. Europe spends 85% of its $120 billion global spending on EVs. This shows the fact that the second segment of the industry has no kings, at least yet, with power being shared among the players. Till now we have talked about the two major players of the game, China and the American companies. One dominates the supply chain, while other has better market position on the globe. But the question is India even on the game? According to a report by Bloomberg's New Energy Fund in 2021, out of a total global spend of $750 billion in green investment, China alone spent $266 billion. The US was a distant second with $114 billion. The major countries of Europe combined would equal the US. India was in the 7th place, not a bad rank to occupy, with $14 billion invested. While the Chinese and Americans invested 40% of this green fund into EVs, India, who already invested so less on its fund, invested less than 5% of it on EVs. This shows the gap of funding India has in this critical sector compared to its rivals. So, is the game over? The answer is no. India is the birthplace of chess. It knows the game. The nation has been moving very smartly in this war. The moves made by the country has been a joint effort by the government, companies and the people themselves. The effort can be divided into three dimensions. First, the government has taken up the task to create the supply chain of the resources required by providing incentives, favorable policies and other support. A recently formed government venture, Kabil, which is a joint venture between three minerals and metal PSUs, is tasked with the job of identifying and acquiring overseas mines. However, given the serious constraints in which PSUs operate, especially when compared with their Chinese counterparts, the chances of success are small. An alternate option being planned is opening exploration policies domestically, benchmark them with the global best practices, and invite global investors to find and mine in India. Simultaneously, it has made up supply alliances with countries ex-China, like with Australia. The Indian government launched the e-Amrit portal in November 2021 as a one-stop destination for all EV-related information like charging location, investment opportunities, policies, and subsidies in this sector. At higher ends of the value chain, from battery cell onwards, there is a need to invest much more, not just in PLI, but given the nascent stage of the industry, in R&D. Here a public-private partnership is vital. Second, the companies have started taking action. It's true that despite intent, the EV sector in India has not been funded properly. However, the country is not without fates. The country has the world's largest two-wheeler market and it's transitioning to EVs fast. The market is led by players like Ola, Hero and Ether, with many players entering this space. Ola has also announced its plans to enter into the car segment, which is a good news for the nation. The world's largest electric scooter factories are in India, but like others, it also faces some supply dependence on foreign imports. In the four-wheeler segment, Tata Mahindra are the lead players in the EV space. They have dedicated production lines for electric cars and are making world-class EVs from their factories. Their future business plans have kept EVs as the main focus in their expansion, which shows the ambition of the companies to dominate the market. Cars like Avinya and Mahindra's line of e-SUVs have been proposed to hit the market by 2024 to 2025. Both the companies have raised capital from foreign investors and have enough capability to drive their goals. Tata is also the leader in heavy commercial electric vehicles like buses and trucks, along with players like Ashok Leyland. The third dimension of effort comes from the startups. The vibrant startup ecosystem is a better indication of future potential because it is more likely to be innovative than the legacy firms. In 2021, investment into EV startups reached a record high, rising by about 255% to reach $444 million. For example, Ola Electric, Blue Smart, Simple Energy, Revolt, and Detail were the EV firms that received the most financing in 2021. About 500 startups spanning the whole EV value chain make up the Indian EV ecosystem, with 63% of those startups solely dedicated to manufacturing. While these three dimensions of effort is appreciable, other countries have done it too, some like China, doing it on a much bigger scale. So what is exactly India's checkmate move in this war? Something that can actually favor the country in this disadvantageous situation. It's the four dimension of effort of the country, the one that is done by its people. The EV industry has two segments, the supply chain and the market. China dominates the first. America is doing well in the second. In India, the market is still under Indian companies. However, the supply chain is highly dependent on foreign imports, especially from China, the biggest one being battery technology, which requires lithium and other metals, which is mainly Chinese owned. The question from the start was how to cut the reliance on these specific metals. India needs the metal which is easily sourced, preferably from Indian mines, and so we just did that. Israel had been in numerous wars with the Arabic nations. It had landed devastating blows to its enemies, yet its enemies always stood up again. The country soon found the reason. It was oil. With the power that came from oil, the nations weren't going to lose the war anytime soon. So what could Israel do? It had to remove oil itself from the world, and it tried just that. Israel made plans to reduce oil's influence on the economy. The country was pivotal in the world's transition to EVs. It focused on R&D, and the mindset of being ambitious enough to do such a huge task was an inspiration. India is adopting something similar. The country's top institutes, the startups, even individual researchers are finding ways to remove the China dependence on the EV supply chain. And the efforts aren't fruitless. Many research outcomes have pointed that metal air batteries are a good alternative against lithium batteries. Aluminium has shown credible signs of performing better than the lithium ion batteries. It's one-third the weight, provides better retention, and above all, is easily available in India. The Birla Group has signed an MOU with Israeli company Finergy to develop aluminium air batteries together. Finergy also formed a joint venture with the IOC for the same. EV players like Mahindra, Suzuki, and Ashok Leyland have welcomed the move and signed letters of intent for the same. Aluminium is one of the rare metals whose supply chain is fully mastered by India, thanks to the Birla Group. Similar replacements and alternatives across the supply chain are being dug out to make the supply chain stable and free from foreign controls. This is not a sure shot win. However, this is the best move we have made so far in matters of self-reliance. India has moved to secure supply chains, create the required manufacturing infrastructure in the country, spur demand, and started focusing on R&D in the country to solve challenges. While the moves are never enough, the intent, drive, and synergy is a very good sign for the nation. The war is still going. Nothing is certain yet. All the sides have got their own methods and pathways to win. China is the current leader. America is toeing behind and trying to break the Chinese dominance over the industry. Whether India dominates the industry internationally or not, India is laying a secure future for itself. Our country won't be dependent on any country for its requirement, like it does today for oil. Self-reliance in such a critical space is a luxury, enjoyed by very few rare nations, and one thing common among them is that they are bound to rise in the future. India is definitely winning at the national level. Will it win at the international level or not? We can't say anything about that. Only time can tell, because after all, national today can go international tomorrow. In the end, the winner can be anyone. But what's sure is that the world is winning from this war.